Hey, everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm so blessed and honored to be here with Tamara Thorpe, the Millennials Mentor and the founder of Real Mentors. Tamara, how are you doing today?
I'm great today, Ben. Thanks for having me. Super happy to be here.
I love this topic. I love mentorship. I love talking about expat experiences. I mean, today we're going to be getting into all sorts of stuff, and I have lots of questions. Mentors have been huge in my life, and I want to know how to kind of pay that forward, if you will, and kind of continue that cycle of mentorship. Um, we have a lot of young people on our team as well. I self identify as a millennial, barely. It feels like I'm stretching it, every day. I got more and more gray hair in here, but I'm looking forward to this. If you're out there right now watching this, do me a favor, hit that like button. Let us know you're out there. Let us know who you are, where you are, what company you're with. I want to know your mentorship questions. Are you looking for a mentor? Have you had mentor relationships? What's worked? Have you been a mentee or a mentor or both? I want to know what's worked for you. How has mentorship impacted your life? We're also going to be talking about cross-cultural, issues, all sorts of things. Look at this, Tamara. Right off the bat, we got millennials in the
All
house.
right. All right. All
What's
right.
up,
And
Faye
Christian.
Hawksworth? Big shout out to Faye, by the way. If you're going to be at the conference at the end of the month in Las Vegas, you got to come through Wednesday and Thursday. Faye and I are throwing a little shindig. We're loving Relo's going to be live from the Win at the Blue Wire Studios, and Faye is throwing a big party outside the broadcast. It's going to be open bar, lots of food, so come check that out. Christian Hooferlu, hey Tamara, good to see you here with Ben. You know this guy, don't you?
I do. I know Christian. The last time I saw Christian, we were hanging out in Malta. So there you go.
Way to make me feel about this big tomorrow. Sorry, we're not in Malta, everybody. Let me know if you're in Malta right now. Get in the
That's right.
comments, or if you've been to Malta. I don't even know where. I don't even think I know where Malta is in the Mediterranean. Where's Malta
It
tomorrow?
is. It's just a little, I think it's the smallest country in Europe. It's just south of Italy, a little island. And we had a great conference there in the spring. And I think I did a live with Christian when we were both there at the conference.
What do I got to do to get an invite to Malta?
Well, it's not hard. I mean, the Maltese are very welcoming. They love for people to come and visit. We were really fortunate that CITAR Europa, which I'm sure is an organization you've heard of, it's the Society for Intercultural Educators, Trainers, and Researchers, and they had their biannual conference there in Malta. And it was unbelievable. It was great to be at an in-person conference again. It was great to see other intercultural practitioners from around the globe come together and connect and share new scholarship and research and a few cocktails by the sea.
Siatar. Now, I believe my colleague Jana Chazanowski went to one of their events in Brazil not too long ago.
She may have. CITAR Brazil's quite active. We've got chapters and associations across the globe, so she very well may have.
Yeah, super cool. We got Drew Phillips checking in. Hey, Ben, what's up, Drew? Drew saying, hey, Ben Cross and Tamara Thorpe. Excited to be tuning in today. Never had a mentor, but have been one a time or two can make a huge difference. Drew, I'd love to hear about your experience and what was it about that relationship that made you decide to mentor those people? What did they approach you? Did you say, hey, you know what, you need my help? Like, how did that work out? Because I always find that to be an odd little kind of a thing in the very beginning. Tamara, how do you begin or initiate a mentor mentee relationship?
Yeah, that's interesting because I thought I was going to respond to Drew because Drew has probably had mentors and mentoring experiences, but because they weren't formal, he may not have considered them mentoring. I think of my mom as my first and best mentor. She is
Right.
somebody that throughout my life has given me some guidance, course corrected, pushed and challenged me to do things that I might not have otherwise have done. And mentoring can happen in really informal and even very serendipitous ways. There may have been times where we had a conversation with a stranger, or a conversation with a professor or someone we passed at a conference. And in that 5-minute conversation, they could have dropped some wisdom that really helped you reframe, think of something in a new light. And those are what we call, serendipitous mentoring, where you just get this spark and it changes how you think about something. It could be even come from, listening to a podcast or watching a live stream. And then mentoring can also happen in very formal contexts. And so I say to people in general, if you're just in general looking for a mentor, look in your immediate circle, right? Who are the people who are already around you, who have wisdom, who have experience, that can guide you, that can encourage you, that can help hold you accountable? Because those are going to be mentors that you have at your disposal right away. If you're looking for something more formal, there's a variety of ways to do it. One of the ways I love is to ask. One of the things we so often miss out on opportunities because we're not willing to ask. So I always encourage people to ask people. If there are people in the
What is that?
stratosphere.
Well, what does that ask like? Is it like I got to get on one knee? Is it do I got to write them a
No.
business letter? Like, do I give them a gift? What's custom? Like, how do you ask them? Because it's such a weird ask to me. Like, to use the word mentor, be like, would you be my
So
mentor?
I'll tell you a secret, which
Please
probably isn't a secret.
mentor
People
me.
love to mentor. People
Yes.
love to mentor because they love to pay it forward. People love to talk about themselves, which mentoring is a lot of talking about yourself and your experience and what you've learned. And people love doing that. And I have never, ever asked someone for mentoring and been turned down. I have my own network of mentors that mentor in my own mentoring events. And I'm currently building a platform where people can access our real mentors. And finding mentors and getting people to mentor is really easy. So it's a really simple ask. It might be introducing yourself to somebody at a conference, at a networking event, and saying, hey, could we have a coffee? Could we have a Zoom call? I'd love to bend your ear. And that might be a single mentoring conversation. If you want something more formal, it's saying, hey, I'm working on this and I'm looking for support. Would you be willing to meet with me on a regular basis? Also, there's a lot of opportunities through LinkedIn. I always say, like, conferences and LinkedIn, right? You can often see people on LinkedIn and they seem like heroes, or you go to a conference and there's somebody who's like the hero, the star of the conference. Go talk to those people, because people don't talk to them because they sort of feel out of reach. But those are people who are looking to share their experiences and their wisdom. So can connect with people on LinkedIn, invite them for that conversation. If you have a colleague at work, it really is inviting people into having a conversation.
Yeah.
And if you want that formalized, it's just asking for more.
Yeah, and I love what you're talking about. Just asking them to have a conversation. We got people checking in there. Hit that like button. Let me know, what are your thoughts on mentorship. Have you had a positive mentoring relationship? What has it taught you? Share that in here. If you have questions, Ruby checking in from San Diego. What's up, Ruby? This is great. We got Scott Chapman checking in from Prime Lending in Dallas. What's up, Scott? Here in my neck of the woods. Scott, have you ever had a mentor? Let me know. Feel free to shout people out too. If they've been a mentor to you, I think that's one of the things that we don't do enough is give people credit for all that they pour into our lives. I mean, none of us got here on our own. Like, literally, like, none of us got here on our own,
Absolutely.
Doris, greetings, everybody. What's up, Doris? Good to have you there. We got questions coming in and comments. This is great. Keep the questions coming in. We're going to make this show about you as long as you got questions. So put them out there. Faye Hawksworth says, love Faye. Does it count that I'm always secretly trying to get mentorship out of my relo peeps?
Absolutely counts, right? That's the thing, that sometimes mentoring doesn't have to be a big deal, and it is just a matter of asking folks, like Christian said, can I bend your ear, or what would you do? You'd be surprised. Most often, I think people don't get stuff. It's because they don't ask. You got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, I agree totally. And Faye, you do a great job of this, Faye. And it's one of the reasons you're so successful is because you're just always having conversations where you're genuinely interested in other people without having an agenda, without trying to sell them something, just like really interested. And people read that in you too, Faye. And that's one of the reasons you're so great to talk to. You have so many friends in this industry. Christian saying a request for having my ear bent, I rarely turn down. However, people who want to pick my brain are oftentimes like, isn't that interesting, Christian?
Yeah.
Yeah, pick my brain is usually like, hey, I want to run like an idea. I want to see if you'd buy this. I want to see if you'd buy this. Let me talk to you about something. Yeah, interesting. So isn't it funny too, the words that we use, the bending of the ear, the picking of the brain. It's very odd terminology.
Yeah, yeah. But it's all related to the head, right? And I think that that's sometimes a missed opportunity is that we think that mentoring is all just about the head, but it's also about the heart. If anybody's connected with me on LinkedIn, you'll see today I shout out to one of my mentors, Carl Meadows, who just recently retired. Retirement was announced this week. And he is not only a friend, but somebody who has helped me become a more compassionate, empathetic listener, somebody who taught me about the power of learning, somebody who helped stretch me as a coach and as a leader. And so much of that was heart speak. And Carl really taught me about the power of a learning conversation where we create and hold conversations so that we can learn and understand better from one another.
What's the difference between a learning conversation and all the conversations we're having?
Most of the time we have conversations to share our own ideas, not to hear other people's ideas. Most of the time we have conversations to get our point across and have our point validated. Very rarely do we have conversations to truly learn about someone else. And a learning conversation really is about being able to understand a person better so that you can be more effective in relationship with one another.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's hard not to always be thinking about the next thing you're going to say or the next point you're going to interject, and it's really just kind of pause your own brain. So that
Yeah, it's one of my friends, colleagues, and mentors, Celestina Garcia, she calls it generous listening, right? The power of listening with generosity, where you are listening to learn, listening to understand. You're not preoccupied with your own thoughts, your own judgments, your own ideas. And I will tell you, that takes practice, right? Like I am somebody who was not a natural born listener. I had to learn to develop the ability to be authentically patient and authentically curious. And that meant in that learning period, I did kind of have to fake it sometimes and like hold my tongue and resist the urge to jump in. But over time, I was able to develop the skill to be a better listener that has made me a better coach, a better mentor, a better manager, because I think one of the things that most people are really hungry for is to be heard.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, when I was, I've read it a few times now. And it said, if you talk to somebody all night long and all you do is ask questions and listen to what they have to say, at the end of the night, they'll say, you are a great conversationalist. They'll rave about you as a conversationalist when in fact, all you did was ask questions and listen.
Yeah.
And, I think it takes some humility. And I think it takes the realization that what we have to say isn't that important, and that the other person has something to teach us and to impart to us that we don't already know. I think, let's face it, a lot of us start from a place of like, we know everything we need to know. That's why we're here, right? Especially if we're moderately successful. Like we made it this far. We know all the stuff, right? So, I think that it really takes putting a person kind of like on a half step above you to say, here, this person has unique experiences that I need to hear about.
Yeah. And I don't even know that it's putting them a half step. It's putting people on an equal footing with yourselves, right? And really being able to say, I always have something to learn. And not only that, right? Whether you are a leader within an organization, a manager, a colleague, or you play a role in your family or the community, having that ability to listen, to learn, and understand it's like data upload. You're just equipping yourself with information that is going to make you better at what you do. If you don't understand what other people's needs, wants, and desires are, you're not going to be effective as a leader, as a manager, as a mentor, as a colleague, as a partner. And so being able to see those opportunities, those kind of conversations as opportunities for this mass data upload that you can now then use to be more effective in that relationship. It really is like, if you're going to be in your own selfish mindset, then be selfishly keen to listen and learn, because it's going to make you better at what you do in relationship with that person.
You said something really interesting. Mass data upload. I think that concept is really fascinating when you think about it, like in terms of like computers and things like that, and data, mass data. If you're out there watching this right now, I want you to hit that like button, to get in the comments. I want to hear your questions for Tamara Thorpe. She is the Millennials Mentor and the founder of Real Mentors. This is your opportunity to understand. I have questions myself about how to be a great mentor. Something that's really important to me because I've had so many great people in my life. Michelle Henry is shouting out Debbie Dull. What's up, Debbie? That's awesome. And if you have someone you want to shout out, I mean, do it. Drew is saying, I agree. Tamara, I've had several great informal mentors from in the house growing up, specifically for sure. My first and most profound mentor outside of the home was my very first office manager, who educated me on how to set chaos into order. Interesting. Do you find that mentors tend to come more from personal life or more from professional life? I mean, do they skew, or is it depending on the mentee?
I think it depends on who you are and the situations you're in, right? I mean, if I think about the myriad of mentors that I have had, that they, like I said, they come from as early as, a parent in my home, counselors I had at summer camp. I mean, I can think back, a summer camp, I don't know, I must have been about 11 or so, and the swim coach. I, he was so instrumental in me establishing self-esteem and confidence and setting goals that felt out of reach, and I remember that so vividly. I also had managers who were incredible mentors, and completely changed the trajectory of my career. I've also, sat on a bus and had a conversation with somebody on a bus ride and walked off and thought, that was really powerful. So they really are everywhere. And it's one of the things that I like. So, I mean, I love being a coach. I love being a trainer and a facilitator. But mentoring comes with a certain amount of freedom that you don't get from the others, because it's not performance based. It's not task based. Mentoring really is what you want it to be in the moment that you need it, right? And in a professional environment, that might be more performance or task based or developmental, and in life it could be very different. And so I really think mentors in the broadest sense of the term are anywhere and everywhere, and then depending upon where you are in your life and what your needs are, you may have a need for a specific mentor for a specific reason.
Really interesting, and it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder about the mentee and like what we need to do in order to be open to mentorship, right? Like you said, next to that person on the bus, you came away saying, wow, what an amazing transformational conversation I just had with this person. 99 people sit next to that person on the bus, they don't have a conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
5 of them, maybe 5 people have a conversation, but they don't leave changed. They didn't get to that level. They didn't get that depth. They didn't ask the right questions. Like, what is it about us that, like, how do we make ourselves open for mentorship?
It's curiosity. It's a willingness to practice curiosity, which in the global mobility, that should be at the heart of all that we're doing here, right? As when we are curious about other people, about other cultures, about other places, curiosity is
right
at the heart of that.
Staying curious. Okay, so just stay curious. I love it. Christian,
and I would say not even staying curious, practicing curiosity.
How do you practice curiosity?
it's being willing to ask the question to the person sitting next to me on the bus. That's the difference between, I can stay curious and I can sit there and have all sorts of internal questions about that person, but practicing curiosity is, hey, where are you going?
Right.
Right? That's the
Right.
difference.
Because we're all looking at the person like wondering like where's this person going? But actually
Yeah,
saying
we all
something.
have
Yeah.
yeah, we all have the curiosity when you sit next to that person on the airplane. I'm like, "Ooh, what's that book they're
What's up?
reading? Are they getting a connecting flight?" And
Do
so
you do
it's, am
that?
I willing?
Do you do
Yes.
that like look at their shirt, look at what they're reading, like try to profile them? Like, I bet you're going to Florida for
Yeah.
retirement. You have a home down there. You have a home up here. Like I do think all this. Like I do a whole thing. Do you do that?
Yeah. And then practicing curiosity is kind of leaning into, okay, are my assumptions right? Let me find
Yes.
out where you're going. And then the beauty is they're going to be a totally different person. And then that's what's so amazing about it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. This is great here. Look at my dad's checking in. Dad, 2 days in a row, Dad, you're spoiling me. Very good points. I think one mentor limits a person. However, too frequently changing mentors can be a sign of avoiding accountability. Is my dad right? You can tell him he's not. It's fine.
Yeah, your dad's 100% right. One of the things that we have talked about most recently in the mentoring world are developmental networks. And developmental networks are having a team of people, 3 to 5 people. And it can happen informally within an organization, or you can create your own developmental network, but it's having different mentors for different needs and having them at the same time. And because you not that having anything wrong with one mentor, but one person can't do everything, and you may need a different set of mentors to help you with different skill sets. Absolutely. And people will often jump from mentor to mentor, coach to coach, because that accountability piece is uncomfortable, right? And when you are being held accountable, that could be an uncomfortable space. But that's what a good peer mentoring group, a good mentor, that's what they should be doing, is holding you accountable, right? And part of the mentoring relationship is discussing in advance, what does that look like? What does it look like for me to be held accountable?
Yeah, I like that. And Christian, we're going to get to your question. And if you've got a question for tomorrow out there, if Doris, Drew, Scott, Jamie, Faye, if you're watching this right now, Ruby, hit that like button, throw a question in here. I'd love to hear your question. They really make me think. I'm curious what you have to say out there. My dad, I have to share this. My dad has really been probably my biggest mentor in my life. There was a long period of time, and I actually missed this because I miss working in an office because I miss calling him on my commute to work and calling him on the way back to work. Because whether I woke up in an amazing mood because something amazing is about to happen today, or I woke up in a funk and feeling low because things weren't going my way, like I would call him, I would talk through it. He'd encourage me, he'd pray with me, he'd do, all these things. And he was always, there for me. He still is. I just don't call him as much because for some reason that car time was just our time to chat, in the morning. And Dad, I really always appreciate, and he knows it, but I'm going to tell him again, Dad, I really always appreciated, our talks. We had one today, so he's been great for it. And a little bit of accountability, a lot of empathy, some good advice, and a lot of love. So thanks, Dad. Appreciate you. Christian, you've got a question for Tamara. Tamara, this is good because you're talking about going from coach to coach, going from a mentor to mentor. But Christian says, Tamara, how would you describe or define the difference between a mentor and a coach?
So I would say, typically with a coach, it's going to be performance related, where you have a specific developmental goal where you are going to be able to measure progress from beginning to end. Which also differentiates that a coaching relationship is probably going to have a beginning and an end, right? When I set up a coaching relationship with someone, we set up parameters. We're going to have this many sessions from this point of time to this point of time. We're going to measure progress over time. And as a coach, I ask a lot more questions, because the goal with coaching really is to help people identify their own needs, their own learning solutions, and their own learning plan, and move them along. As a mentor, I probably give more advice as a mentor. A mentoring relationship can be ongoing. It can be informal, formal. It can be episodic, right? And so it's a little less structured, less formal, and a mentoring relationship may not necessarily be focused on a particular skill set or a particular developmental goal. It might be around a variety of developmental needs, personal needs, personal growth, a variety of things. And a mentoring relationship may not always have as many accountability pieces, but it can.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, I feel like this is my perception. Maybe you could tell me I'm right or tell me I'm wrong or clarify. But my thought is when I have a mentor relationship, I call them and it's like a friend that gives really good advice. Like I call them and I'm like, hey, I'm going, or maybe I'll start with venting about something. Right. And then they'll be like, well, sounds like this or sounds like that, and it's like someone I can call that's like gives me just great advice. Whereas a coach has like a framework and they're moving me through kind of a curriculum a lot of times. And, I think you kind of brought this point up, like ask me questions to get me to the answer
Yeah.
versus telling me maybe experientially what they've done or seen in their life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
yeah, very, very cool. Let's see. Oh, Kerwin, look at this. You know what? I just love the people that pop in here. Kerwin Guillermo. Kerwin's been a mentor of mine. And Kerwin says, Kerwin's coming in from Singapore. Kerwin, what time is it where you are? Anyway, this man is just amazing. The energy he has for people. Tamara, I love the call out on accountability. Any encouragement you may offer for mentors. I find so much fulfillment in relationships like this, either a mentee or a mentor. This is how we may touch the careers and lives of others and allow them to make a difference in ours.
Yeah. Powerful. Yeah, I think it's a great call out, right? I think people there, and it's funny because I probably meet more people who want to be mentors and people who want to be mentees. But I think that's because people feel like they have a lot to learn. Like I said, I host virtual speed mentoring events, and it's always crazy that I always have more mentors than mentees at these events, right? Which is great because then mentors get to play both roles in those events. But people really do like to mentor. And I would say for people who are looking to mentor, to be bold, just like people are looking for mentors, right? Either way, be bold, put yourself out there, ask, be willing to share your stories.
Yeah, that's great. I find it interesting though what you say, and thank you so much, Kerwin. And we're here with Tamara Thorpe, the Millennials Mentor and founder of Real Mentors. I'm going to ask her about that moniker and what all that is about. But I want to ask you one question before. You said when you have your groups, you have more mentors than you have mentees. What is up with that imbalance? I'm super curious about the mentality there.
If I knew, I would tell you, but I will say this. I think that when people are struggling or are in development or are looking to learn, that people often, right? I can say as somebody who offers mentoring, coaching, and training as part of my work, when people are looking to learn, they often struggle to know what the right answer is, right? There's a lot of stuff out there, right? Do I read a blog? Do I ask a family member? Do I look for a formal mentor? Should I hire a coach? There's a lot of choices and noise out there. And I think sometimes for people, it can be very difficult to sort through the noise, right? And so, and intimidating, right? Which is one of the
Intimidating.
reasons why I have been so intentional about building the Real Mentors Network, and we're now building an entirely new platform because we want to make mentoring accessible. I want people to feel like if I want a mentor, I can go online, click, and find a mentor, whether I want it to be formal and ongoing or a quick conversation. But I think to your point at the beginning, the first question you asked me was, how do I find a mentor? And I
Yeah.
think that's, part of it.
Yeah, and I think this whole thing about like it requires vulnerability to say, listen, I'm going through something I don't really know how to figure out. You seem smarter than me on this. You seem like you have experience I need. It's very humbling. It's very like vulnerable, and people have a tough time with that, especially with someone that they hold in high esteem. And I think that and it's almost something having to do with the word mentor too. There's something about the word mentor. It's like sensei, train me. It's like it has like this big thing to it. Whereas coach, not so much. Or hey, give me some advice on this. Let me bend your ear. It's super easy to say, will you be my mentor? Is like a very hard thing to say. So I love this idea of a platform that kind of, I don't want to say destigmatized, but makes it more accessible. It makes it more accessible. Your words, perfect. Kerwin has a couple things, and I want to hear about this platform. Kerwin says the one thing common for me, whether our coach or mentors, we have to place the mentee at the center. No agenda, just purity of intention to help and support a talent we advocate for. He goes on to say, in my experience, mentors gain as well with some reverse mentorship. I have gained inspiration from many of those conversations.
Yeah, and I'll share this for Kerwin, because I've written quite extensively about mutual mentoring. Reverse mentoring takes our traditional model of mentoring and saying, hey, maybe the less seasoned person has something to learn from, or maybe the more seasoned person has something to learn from the less seasoned person, which is the sort of current model of reverse mentoring. And mutual mentoring assumes that no matter who the two people are, we both have something to learn from one another. And if we can go into mentoring relationships with intent for mutual mentoring and with a sense of equity and reciprocity, it's a really powerful relationship. I always, I have no trouble building up my network of mentors, because the mentors get so much out of it. It is so rewarding, and they just love the experience.
Yeah, it does. It really does give a lot to you when you can watch somebody grow and be a part of their development. I got to know about this platform, though. Tell me more about this platform, Tamara.
So one, I've been the Millennials Mentor for I don't know, probably going on a decade, and I, in my work in leadership
Back when
development.
millennials were like demonized out there. Oh, these millennials these days, they job hop, and they're never going to settle down. They're never going to buy a house. And you've mentored a whole generation to start families, buy homes, and be productive citizens. Is that accurate, Tamara?
Well, y'all, millennials still aren't buying homes, but I that's still not happening. But I've been doing this work in the leadership space for a long time. I have also done a lot of work in youth development. That was a key part of my own spiritual journey, my own religious practice. And as I was building my business, I found that the people who needed me most, right, weren't the people I was trying to get to buy my leadership programs. It was all of this early career talent, all of these young people who I had, been a leader, a mentor, a counselor. All the ways in which I was showing up for youth were all moving into their careers and finding themselves in positions of leadership and not knowing what to do. And so
Yes.
I thought, well, I can keep trying to sell my programs to people who think they already have it figured out, even though they don't. Or I can build my programs for people who are knocking on my door saying, help me be a better leader.
I love
And
this.
it
Can I
was,
just interject one thing, Tamara? I love what you're saying. I was these these millennials, about to break broad generalizations that are inherently wrong, right? These millennials, they want to get promoted faster, right? And they are getting promoted quickly. They are smart. They do bridge the gap in organizations between the digital and the analog, right? And all the stuff, right? And so they are getting promoted. But you're right, they find themselves in these roles, in these leadership positions, and they don't have a lot of times the people chops and the life experiences that they need to be empathetic. I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience here, because I was promoted into a supervisory role when I was 20, 24 years old, and I had no empathy for people with kids, for people with families, for people who were sick, and like I had no empathy. I remember this. I didn't deliver messages very well. It was a train wreck. Like I had talent, but I didn't have any of the soft skills and the coaching and all the stuff. So what you're talking about right now, it just speaks to me like it's my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, 100%. You know, that I was the 18 the first time I was a manager and I sucked. I was
Yeah,
the worst boss ever, right? And in all of the years of what I learned, and then of course adding my education and training onto that to really have a deep grounding in this concept of leadership and the tools and skill sets and mindsets that it requires. I started to build programs for the people who wanted them, who said, you know, how do I resolve conflict? How do I get people to buy into my ideas? How do I get people to move forward? How do I help someone on my team who's struggling get better? They didn't know how to do that. They got promoted because they were great at PR, or they were great at being the tech guy, or they were great at
right,
whatever. That's
right.
how you get promoted into management. They didn't get promoted into management because they were good at management and leadership.
And this is a common problem. We promote good individual contributors. We don't promote people for their leadership skills, and then we just assume, well, you could do it, so you could teach other people to do it. It's
Yeah.
not that way.
No, it's not that way. And most of the people who are leaders in organizations got put into their roles for the same reason, right? And so I wanted to build programming and support around that. And I did it as the Millennials Mentor because I wanted to be able to be a resource for a generation that was hungry and passionate and practicing curiosity and being better in their work and in their roles as leaders. And as part of that, you know, I offer, I have an online leadership program. I do live leadership trainings or in person, as long with virtual. I have coaching. And then a few years, probably back in 2016, I said, you know, I want more. I want to supplement all of this with creating mentoring experiences. And so in 2018, I hosted my first in-person speed mentoring event. Eventually, those speed mentoring events went from in-person to virtual. When COVID hit, I had been planning to have an in-person speed mentoring event, and we couldn't do it. So I thought, can we make it happen in Zoom? And it was so incredible, so powerful.
Wow.
People had an incredible experience. And so we've continued that. And that has really been the catalyst to taking an idea I had about 15 years ago of what if we could swipe right or left and find mentors, right?
Wow.
And so that's where we're now in sort of the building phase of the Real Mentors Network platform. That will be an online platform where mentees can come and be matched with mentors. And we're looking at our early 2023 launch. So people can follow me at tamarathorpe.com or on LinkedIn. And I'm sure you'll share my social media to follow us, and look forward to that launch in 2023.
Let's do that. Let's put the link there to Tamara Thorpe's website. Let's put that in the comments here. Tamarathorpe.com. Is that what that the website?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, please do follow Tamara. I love this idea. We had a mentoring show, actually a mentoring week, months ago. And this was one of the ideas we talked about. It's like, how do we connect folks? We have all these people over here raising their hand as want to be mentors. And then we have some people like kind of like, I could use a little mentorship here and there, right? Because they're not as bold about it. Oh, I need help. Like they're kind of like, I could use some help.
Yeah.
And if they could kind of discreetly kind of just browse everyone who's out there and be like, wow, like that's like, I'd love to hear from them, swipe, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I love this idea, Tamara. How did you come up with this idea?
You know, years ago, I'm guessing it was about 15 years ago, I was on an airplane and I was thinking about where I was going to take my business next, right? So that conversation. And in that same idea, that plane ride, had a journal and I wrote down the Millennials Mentor. And I started to write out this idea around an app. And I kind of shopped around the idea for about a year, kind of, reached out to some mentors, talked to some folks who had some apps. My idea is certainly not novel. There's, other ways in which people have tried to make mentoring more accessible through software or through other websites. And at that time, it seemed a little out of reach. And I also got some advice from a business consultant who was like, build your brand, build some programs, then go for it. So, I went on and I proceeded to build my brand, build my business, travel the world, and do all the things that I've been doing for the last, 10 years or so. And then when COVID hit and we started doing my speed mentoring events virtually, I said, wait a second. We cannot underestimate what is possible in a virtual environment, and we now and now is the time. And so I took that time to reach out to another mentor who's a genius friend and colleague in the tech and AI space, and I said, I had this idea, I have it now. I think I want to make it happen. We had a few calls. He helped me sort of brainstorm what I really wanted to achieve, what it could look like, and have started that process. So we're now at a new stage in the process, and I'm really excited. It is terrifying. Don't get me wrong, right? Like this is a whole new world and a whole new business, but it's exciting.
What's been the hardest part of developing this business? I mean, I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I'm really curious about your journey here with this.
Uh, Transferring this idea you have and putting it in the hands of a vendor that you hope will build what you want, and trying to speak the same language as people who do things that I don't know how to do. That's been the hardest. That by far has been the hardest part. And
Translating your vision into a product.
translating your vision into a product, and being able to I am somebody who's good with technology, but I can build a website, but I can't build a complex website. So having conversations with developers and other people and trying to understand what they're saying and getting them to try to understand what I'm saying, and having a meetings of the minds and not having a meeting of the minds. I worked with a developer for many months. We ended up with something that wasn't what I wanted. We now having to work with a new developer. That is
Yeah.
part of the process, right? Whether it's a developer, a copywriter, or a coach, sometimes you start a working relationship with someone and in the end it doesn't work, and you've got to end it and start a new one. And it's also the same with mentoring. One of my friends last year, we we're contributing to the University of New Mexico here in Albuquerque, where I live, has a mentoring institute. And every year they host the most incredible mentoring conference in October. Last year we were talking about how very often in mentoring relationships, the conversation we don't have at the beginning is, how do we want to break up when it's time to break up?
Right. Right. Because then that could be awkward, right? Like we just had this meaningful relationship, but it's run its course. Does that reflect on me? Is that like judgment? Like, are you breaking up with me? Did I do something wrong? I'm not valuable anymore. Like what, how do you know when it's over?
Yeah. And I think when we can have those conversations up front, right? That, how, if and when there comes a time when this relationship no longer works, how do we want to end it and end it gracefully? And, certainly, like I said, the first developer I was working with were with people who I have a lot of respect for, people I have a lot of appreciation for, but it wasn't working. And I needed to end that relationship, but still preserve the personal professional relationship, and that can be hard to do, but it is humility, being honest, being clear about what your needs are, owning the part that you didn't do right, and then being clear about what moving on looks like.
Yeah. Is it important to set a goal or an objective early on in the mentor relationship where it's like, okay, I'm going through this season. I'm starting a business and I need some mentorship along the way. And like once it's launched, we're probably good. And then I'll move on to, a new relationship or whatever. Like, I mean, do people do people need to do that in the beginning, or can you leave it open? What's your opinion?
I think it depends on the mentor and mentee, right? I've had mentors, and I think most people who are mentor will be very clear about what their availability is, right? I have a colleague, she is a senior VP at a major tech company, and she doesn't have time for extended mentoring relationships. She's like, I'll have a phone call with someone. Absolutely. But I'm not going to have an ongoing mentoring relationship with somebody because I don't have time. So, our Real Mentors Network platform that we're building to be structured on the type of mentoring relationship people want, right? Do I want something that's quick, or do I want something that's ongoing? So I think it's got to be some self-awareness on both the part of the mentor and mentee of being honest with folks about what our access and availability are, and discussing that up front, being clear about what kind of frequency or cadence you can have in meeting with folks, and knowing that this is something that may not have an end date, or we need it to have an end date, and the mentor could drive that, or the mentee could drive that. If somebody says, look, I'm working on a project and I really just need a couple calls to get me from point A to point B, cool.
Right.
But I've had a mentor, a mentee come to me and say, I'm just in a transition in life and I'm looking for a mentor. Can we meet, every couple of weeks, once a month? Absolutely. Right. I have the bandwidth for that. And so
yeah, I find that when I've done these mentor relationships, and I've put like standing meetings on calendars, it always feels forced when I show up. I may or may not have anything like hot at the moment. And now like here we are for 30 minutes or an hour, right? And I'm like, I gotta like make stuff up, But now with a coaching call, I love the standing meetings. So I show up, they have a curriculum, there's homework, like, I like the mentor relationships that are more informal, I guess, where it's like, I know I can always call Kerwin. I know I can always text him or call him if I need him, and like, hey, what do you think about this? Versus like, hey, we're going to show up, third Thursday of the month and sit there and look at each other and, how's the family? How's everything at work? It's like, well, that kind of stuff. So just my experience.
It can be difficult in informal and formal mentoring relationships to know what to ask, and having the resources. One of the things I've tried to do with my work, whether you find it on LinkedIn or my website, is provide resources that give people some guidance on how we have these conversations. And sometimes it is just a matter of, as a mentor, taking good notes and making sure that the next time we meet, I'm going to ask them about this thing they said they were going to do. I'm going to hold them accountable to that thing, or I'm going to see how things are going about that one thing they said. So for me, I don't necessarily have the best memory, but if I take notes, those notes will trigger my memory. But it is being intentional and being thoughtful. And sometimes that may mean, as the mentor, mentee, you take 5 minutes before the call, refresh on the notes, kind of prep. What are 2 to 3 questions I can come in with? Because typically once you're 2 to 3 questions in, you can get that natural flow.
Yeah. And I have so many more questions about mentorship, and thoughts around it, and how do we do this in the global mobility space. And I know there are a ton of mentors out there, and there's a ton of people new to the industry. Frankly, my show has been a place where a lot of people new to the industry come and start to get a lay of the land and understand who's who and how it all works together and ask questions and stuff. So I would love to partner with you once you've launched, and kind of get our community on board so that we can use this tool, because I think there's just such a need out there, and I think they'd love it. So
yeah, we would love that, certainly. Right, in the expat space, there is a need for it, and professional space. Yeah,
and I want to talk about that too, because you've lived abroad, haven't you?
I have. I've been very fortunate. My husband and I, we've been married for 20 years, and half of that we have spent living abroad.
How was that experience for you? How has that informed
It's
your work?
phenomenal. I mean, I was very fortunate. I've been very fortunate in my life. The first time I had the opportunity to go abroad, I was just 16. And that singular experience transformed my entire life.
Wow.
There and then was like professional career in global whatever is going to
Global
allow me to
whatever. Just get me out of
global
here. I need to
whatever.
go see some stuff.
That's right. Global whatever. I need to experience this. And so I had the opportunity to do that 16, then 18. Then in my early 20s, I was fortunate to live in Seoul, South Korea. And then came back, worked in the US for quite some time, and ended up having in careers that in international education that afforded me the opportunity to travel. And then when I got married, my husband works for the government, and with his job, we got to spend 6 years living in Western Canada, 4 years living in Ireland. We just moved back to the US about a year and a half ago from 4 years in Ireland. And it has just been, a real game changer.
Do you think it's important to give kids that exposure? Like you said, you were 16 and you just got the bug. I remember, of course,
100%.
my 16-year-old experience was going to Mardi Gras, and that's where I discovered, okay, I want to go to college in New Orleans. And so I had a slightly different experience, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, I was a very impressionable 16-year-old, and I got the bug. So is it important that we give our kids these global and international experiences? And what's that
Yeah.
right age to really introduce them?
So it's interesting. So I have, that has been my international journey. And when I was living and working in Canada, I had the opportunity to become aware of an organization called CISV International. CISV International is a peace education program for children and youth. And the programs start for children at age 11. And the reason they start for children at age 11 is because the founder, who originally was a child psychologist, in her research found that children start to develop their value system around age 11. And if we can have kids have the opportunity to meet children from other parts of the world, that they will develop the empathy and the cultural competence needed to be able to create peace in the world, right?
Wow.
Big mission,
That's
right?
big. Yeah.
Big mission. But the organization is 70 years old. Pre-COVID, the organization is hosting 200 international programs a year. There are hundreds of thousands of children and family who have been able, and through other programs like AIFS and AFS, right? There's lots of opportunities and programs that give people that opportunity. And it is so key for people to have that opportunity to learn at a young age what empathy looks like, what curiosity looks like, what it means to value differences. And, a one-time experience isn't going to do it, right? Like, one of the things that we know about how we acquire cultural competence is it comes from having a series of experiences over time. I don't think there is any age too young that you can
Right.
travel with children and give them that opportunity to experience, but we cannot make assumptions that children or anyone is going to not have to process that experience, right? That's why intercultural training, cultural competence training,
Right.
preparing for living abroad and going abroad, even if it's just for vacation, having that cultural information, like I said, right? That becomes that mass data upload I was talking about, is that when you prepare for travel, whether it's for short term or long term, all that cultural information is going to only enhance your experience.
Yeah, and Christian saying I agree 100%, Jamie. Yeah, I think that's great. I could talk to you about this quite a bit. I've got kids that are 4 and 7, and I'm getting ready to go to the UK here in a couple months, and I would love to give them that experience. Closest thing I get is to bring them, chocolates and Legos and toys from over there. But I'd love to get them that experience. Let me ask you this, just one thing about the kids and the cross cultural. What's maybe one piece of advice you'd give to parents who are looking to give their kids an experience abroad? As far as preparing them to receive that experience.
I've talked to a lot of parents about sending their kids away to camp in another country, another part of the world.
How do they feel about that? Do they freak out? Because I think my wife would freak out.
Yeah, so I think it depends, right? So parents who have had that experience are very comfortable and confident, and they're like, pack your bag, kids, you're going to go. right? I went to summer camp in the US starting at age 7. And every year I fought my mom. Every year I fought my mom. I remember when I was 12 and I had been going to the same summer camp, and she was now sending me to a different summer camp out of state, and I had to take an airplane. I remember being in the airport telling her, like, you're the worst parent. How could you put me on an airplane and do this to me? And, a week later, I had no memory of that conversation or what
Right.
home was like, because I was at camp and I was fine. And I think one of the things we see is we are asking parents to trust us as an organization.
Mhm.
So no matter which organization is that you are giving your kids this experience, you have to have trust and confidence in that organization. Know that your child is going to be okay and is going to learn a lot. So I think parents have to do their due diligence, whatever the organization is, which is fair enough.
Sure.
But kids are um, incredibly curious and eager to connect. And when you have 80 kids in a camp from 15 different countries who are building friendship despite language skills or cultural background, that's a really unique, powerful experience to give kids. And parents do all kinds of things. Oh, make sure they text me, make sure they write letters. I remember when I went to camp and they'd be like, you have to write a letter to your parent. It was like, I'm fine. Right?
I'm
Like,
fine. Stamp.
right? I did it. It's because kids do okay, right? It becomes its own experience, their own community, and it is something that will shape and shift their life forever.
These kids don't realize their parents are over here begging for proof of life, and you're
Right.
just like, I'm fine. um, Let me know if you're watching this right now. I want to know, would you let your kids go to camp in another country? I want to know. And if so, at what age? What age are you talking about, Tamara?
Well, look, for me, I was fortunate. I got to travel for my first time abroad when I was 16. And I was fortunate that I had a parent who said, go. I remember being terrified, like, okay, mom's always let me go to camp, but is she going to let me go to Spain? And I went home and I was like, hey, mom, there's this program and it's in Spain. And she was like, when do you leave? When do
Oh
you leave?
wow, you
I
are
had a really
lucky.
supportive parent, and that really is what it takes. And fear, it's absolutely reasonable to have fears and for folks to do their due diligence. But whether you are traveling with your own kids as early as possible, I think one of the reasons that I was always so interested and curious about travel was because I traveled with my parents as kids, right? My parents took us places, and that not necessarily foreign countries, right? I mean, we used to go to Hawaii. I remember going to the desert. Like, our parents took us to experience new things. And I think when you can create the opportunity for your children to experience new things, that's really powerful. You don't always have to go to another country to learn about another culture, another community that's different from your own. And so I would encourage parents to expose your kids to difference and to do it with curiosity and acceptance. I think that's really powerful. And to be willing to take risks, to give them experience and opportunities that they might not otherwise have, whether it's summer camp in your community or in another country. I know CISV International offers it for kids age 11. I think we're an organization that does it probably for kids younger than some of the other programs, because I think AFS might be a little older, but I have, worked with other organizations that have kids doing a semester or a whole year abroad when they're just in middle school, right?
Wow, fascinating. Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Tamara, this has been so interesting. Hey, we got a couple minutes. You want to play a game with me real quick?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Stacy, let's go. Tomorrow we're gonna play overrated or underrated. So basically,
All
I'm gonna
right.
give you a topic and you tell me if it is overrated or underrated. And of course, I
All
will
right.
tell you if you are correct.
Okay.
Stacy, go ahead. Life in the US, overrated or
Overrated.
underrated?
Overrated.
Really, the
Overrated.
United States is not the absolute best country in the world, end all be all, and only place to ever live.
No, it is absolutely not. It is one of the many places in the world that has great things and bad things and interesting things. And as somebody who got to spend 4 years living in Ireland, I was always so glad to come back to the US and have the things I like. And there isn't a day that goes by that I think, oh man, I miss Ireland, right? Like, and I miss France, and I miss all the things. The world is a great place, and everyone I think should be open to exploring it.
Give me 3 countries. If we love the US, give me 3 countries that we should consider living in.
If you love the US, if you love the US, 3 places. I think people should consider Brazil. I think people should consider France. It's my favorite. And I'll tell you, Ireland is one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Wow.
And I spent like first year of COVID, full lockdown in Ireland, not US lockdown, like real lockdown.
Real lockdown, and you still loved it. Wow, that's saying a lot. You know, I do got to get to Brazil and check it out. I hear nothing but great things about it. So that's definitely on the list. All right, next, discount travel. Overrated or underrated?
Overrated. Discount travel is the thing, but I think 2 things. I think 1, it has made the travel industry a little less customer service oriented.
You ain't lying about
that. Right? I think that's a challenge. I also think that discount travel was cool when I was 20 and I didn't have any money. But I will tell you, spending a little extra money can go a long way when you're traveling, whether that's a little extra money for a meal, a little extra money for that flight or a tour. I just think, save up because it makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree. When I stay in hotels now, I am so bougie. And when I remember college, it was like the best experience of my life, sleeping on the couch in an apartment with like four guys, and there was probably rats in that place. I didn't care at all. But now I would like die. So I totally get you.
I was my early 30s. I slept on a beach in Thailand under a mosquito net, and I was like, "This is so cool." But yeah, now car
that sounds
service.
Like a story for another podcast. Okay, next, cultural training. Overrated or underrated?
Underrated. I think people do not understand how powerful cultural training is in enhancing your experience, increasing employee retention. It's just so powerful. It really is. It's a place where companies skimp, and it is not the right place to skimp.
Yeah, I hear this. I hear this so often from experts, and yet I still hear companies not having it, not putting it in their budget, not putting it in their programs. And I don't know what the missing link there is, but I think there's work to be done on that front. And I'm happy whenever we have an intercultural trainer and folks on here. Next, Tower of Mentors, overrated or underrated?
Underrated. I don't think people understand how good this can be.
It is. You're right. It's like a life hack. It's like a life hack. Like you want to know how to do? Ask somebody.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. And they love doing it for you. And I think you've shown that. Last, doing everything on your own. Overrated or underrated?
Overrated. Right? Amen. Just ask. Ask for help. Ask the question. Ask the person out of reach. Seek to learn. Be curious. Right? It's Stephen Covey. Seek first to understand. Practice curiosity. Really. I hate it when people are like, "Well, I just was trying to figure it out on my own." Waste of time.
Yeah, you don't get any extra badges for figuring it out on your own.
No,
it's like let's just do it as efficiently as possible. Save yourself some bumps and bruises and some time. This has been awesome. Tamara Thorpe, the Millennials Mentor and founder of Real Mentors. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being on Love and Reload today.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to everyone for watching. I appreciate you. We wouldn't have a show without you. So hit that like button. And thanks for everyone who got involved today. Love your questions, and we will catch you next time.